Moscow has gone for broke. Why is Putin hitting the Ukrainian government and energy sector, and how will Donald Trump react to all this? This and other topics we'll discuss right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova, and today with us is Michael Sheitelman again, and I'm very glad to see you, Michael. Thank you for joining us. Hello.
Good evening, Iryna.
Since the beginning of 2025, the number of Russian airstrikes in Ukraine has increased more than fivefold. In June and July, Russia launched a record number of drones, combining them with missiles. In fact, the enemy began to simultaneously launch more drones in a day than in months of strikes in 2024, according to an analysis by the Washington Post. Bloody, measured, thoughtful. Russia is now deliberately going for maximum escalation. Western experts are convinced. The strike on the cabinet of ministers is a measured and thoughtful element of Putin's strategy. The largest Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine since the beginning of the invasion on the night of September 7 shows the unwillingness of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to end the war, but instead demonstrates his readiness for further escalation, writes The Telegraph. Putin's troops often go up and down the escalation ladder, and this is a kind of element of the containment strategy in order to reduce Ukrainian strikes and to weaken the West's resolve, as well as demonstrate Moscow's military superiority. But the publication notes it is not only the strike on the government buildings that should be considered an escalation. The latest airstrike was not only the most massive since the beginning of the war, but also the seventh case since June of the use of more than 400 drones. This tactic of over large waves of attacks is depleting Ukraine's already limited air defense and interception. So, Michael, what are the main goals of such strikes? What are the main goals of Russian dictator Putin as he wants attack energy infrastructure and strikes the government building?
Well, they have different goals. The first goal, they say it openly that this is terroristic goals, and the Russian government and Russian representatives of Kremlin, they said during the war that they strike to civil population only for one reason, for that civil population should put a pressure on the government to surrender in this war. That's it. And this is, for example, the official speaker of President Putin, Mr. Peskov, said that the Ukrainian government could stop this suffer of civil population by surrendering to the Russian army. So their first goal and the main goal is terroristic, absolutely terroristic goal. And they have also additional goals. For example, they want to stop the hot water inside big cities. They want to stop the electricity inside big cities, and they did that. They did that during the war. We remember the first winter of the war, the winter between 22 and 23. Then Ukraine had very low possibilities in counter missiles and in air defense. So the Russians, they succeed in this business. They stopped electricity in Kiev and in other big cities during days and nights, and it was very difficult to civil population to surrender, and a lot of very old people, they died. They died in hospitals because of there were no possibility to make the surgeries, etc., etc. So yes, so first goal is terroristic, and the second is to kill how much they can civil population. That is also the important goal to the Russians.
Yes, clear here. But Michael, what about our government building? It's like, in fact, Putin has broken the tactic agreement not to strike at decision-making centers. Yes, a military political observer of the information resistance group Alexander Kovalenko noticed and analyzes the specifics of the aggressor's latest strike. So why forward such a strike?
That is rumors. There were not any agreement about any targets and any centers of decision making and any government buildings. But during the war, Russians destroyed, I believe, hundreds or thousands government buildings inside Ukraine. This is the building of central government, but almost every day they strike some government buildings in different regions of Ukraine. For example, if you could see the pictures of Kherson district government building, they just put the bombs every day on this building. And Kharkov, for example, Kharkov, which is the second city of Ukraine after Kiev by the number of population. At the beginning of the war, they struck exactly to the main administrative building on Kharkov. And the same you could say about just any city in Ukraine. So that was the first strike exactly against the central government, but against another government buildings like also like some intelligence services buildings and the civil buildings on different cities. They struck that. That is not new. Yeah, obviously it is the most loud event, because everybody in the world, they see the picture of the building of the central government. So this is the difference, but only this is the difference. Yeah.
A lot of experts and analytics now say that we should strike Kremlin because it's like we'll be on the same page. What do you think about such idea?
At first, they struck Kremlin. They struck Kremlin. It was in the summer of 2022 or the autumn of 2022. Then they struck it by drones, and they struck the main building of Kremlin, the main building of the Russian administration, Russian president administration, and also the spokesman of Mr. Putin said that we struck exactly the roof of the premises the Putin's meetings room were located. Yeah, so it happened. This is not something new. Speaking about the strikes by the, for example, ballistic rockets, ballistic missiles. So we don't have ballistic missiles. In fact, we don't have ballistic missiles. I'm sure that they had attempts by drones, but it is very difficult to bomb the center of the city of Moscow by drones, because the Russians, they concentrated the counter missiles forces inside the Moscow city. Really, they took it from other cities, from other very important objects, like, for example, the oil producing, etc., etc. They took it to city center of Moscow. So that is not easy. And I believe that the next attempt by Ukrainian army to strike the Kremlin will be then Ukrainian ballistic missile will be launched. This is the only option. We don't have any Western ballistic missiles or with a range 500, 600 kilometers, and we need that. And as far as we know, by the open information from the last exhibition in Poland, for example, that Ukrainian company prepared, and the two ballistic missiles, the names of that is FP7 and FP9. So FP9, the range of these missiles this missile will be about 800 kilometers, so it will be enough to strike center of the city of Moscow. And by the way, Russians, they don't have Patriot systems, counter missile systems, so they have any tool to stop ballistic missiles.
So why, Michael, it seems to me that the most effective sanctions now are our strikes by Ukrainian defense forces on Russian oil refineries?
Not only on the refineries, but also all the oil and gas infrastructures. Last night, for example, two days ago, we struck to the pipelines between Belarus and Russian Federation on the Russian territory. Obviously, we don't strike on Belarus territory, but this is the pipelines between the Belarusian refineries and Russian oil producers. Because we have no possibility to strike Belarusian refineries. They are like neutral in this war. But they produce the Russian oil, and they produce it and they sell it to the Russian army. So in this case, our special forces just strike the pipelines and not the refineries. But yes, during last couple of months, let's say, we struck about 10 refineries out of 50. Russians, they have about 50 refineries, so 10 out of 50 were struck, and half of them just stopped, and another half is reduced the production of the gasoline, etc. And we could see that on the Russian market, the prices of gasoline is highest. They're on the highest historical level inside Russian Federation. That's first. And second, they have a lack of gasoline in part of Russian regions. It is mostly in southern regions, in occupied territories, by the way, in Crimea, for example, and in Zaporizhia, Ukrainian occupied territories. But the first time they feel it also inside Moscow and inside St. Petersburg. There were reports on last weekend that also inside Moscow and St. Petersburg, they don't have enough modern gasoline, let's say the high level gasoline.
Yes, and it very good news for us, but it seems to me that all Russians will keep calm, and we will not see any protests or any actions against Putin's regime.
No, I also don't believe in any protests. That they don't have any chance. The protests, they were taken at the beginning of the war, and thousands of Russian citizens, they went to jail for these protests, and some part were killed by Russian special forces. But from this time, a long time were spent by Russian oppositions for nothing. And inside Russia, the laws inside Russia, they become tougher and tougher and tougher. And the last news about Russian opposition is the news from today, just from today. We have one of opposition leaders, Mr. Ilya Yashin. He was jailed for anti-war position during almost 2 years. And last autumn, before 1 year ago, something like that, he was released in the framework of exchange of prisoners with United States and Germany. He was released from the jail, but he was thrown out of Russian Federation. And he did not agree to be released. He wanted to sit in the jail. He wanted to stay in Russian Federation. So today, Russian Federation, they canceled his passport and canceled his citizenship. So the guy who was born in Russian Federation, who doesn't have any other documents, any other citizenship, any other permanent residency, for example, and he refused to take any other citizenship because he says, okay, I am Russian citizen and I want to continue my political measures against Russian authorities. So his citizenship was cancelled, and it is absolutely against Russian constitution. So I bring this example not just to speak about Russian opposition, but also to speak about our peace process with Russian Federation. If you remember, the special envoy of American president, Mr. Stefan Witkov, said that Putin promised him that he will include in Russian constitution the point about not to start the new war against Ukraine and Europe. But the Russian authorities, they don't follow their own constitution. They just don't follow that. If they were follow Russian constitution, Mr. Putin was pensioner, not the president of Russian Federation, because the last presidential term of Mr. Putin was ended by 2008, and all the afterwards, this is against the Russian law, against the Russian constitution. So who cares? Who cares about Russian constitution? Russians, they don't care about constitution.
Because Russian constitution remains an empty paper, Putin can write there everything he wants, and only he.
Yes, but Iryna, till today we thought like that, yeah. But today, this example with Mr. Yashin, the Russian opposition leader, says us anything else. that they don't care about this constitution. They don't change the constitution, especially for Mr. Yashin. Yeah, they just canceled his citizenship, and they didn't care that this is exactly against the constitution. They don't care. They could do that, so they don't care. Like, also this war, then the war against Ukraine started by Russian Federation. It was against the constitution. Russian Federation, by the law, they can't start this war, but they started, as you know.
But, on the other side, on autumn 2022, Russian Federation, including our territories, Donetsk region, Lugansk region, Kherson region, Zaporizhia region, Crimea, to their illegal constitution. And a few days ago, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, told that all world should recognize these territories like Russian because they included them to their constitution.
Well, that's a sophisticated logic, but this is absolutely senseless, and we understand that this is just a rhetoric tool by Mr. Lavrov, and this rhetoric tool does not have any sense, just any. So we don't care. We don't care in Ukraine and in all Western world what is written in Russian constitution. I believe that only Mr. Witkov, who is the special envoy of Mr. Trump, cares about Russian constitution. Who cares? Russians, they don't care about Russian constitution. Ukrainians not care about Russian constitution, and also the West countries. So who cares about what they wrote there?
Agree. So let's speak about another special envoy of Donald Trump, Keith Kellogg. He told that he was in that building with Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko 2 weeks ago, and history shows that events can spiral out of control because of such actions from Russian Federation. This is why President Trump is working to stop this war. This attack is not a signal that Russia is seeking to end the war diplomatically. Trump met with Putin 3 weeks ago. Since then, Putin has met with fellow authoritarian leaders to plot against the United States. That he returned to Moscow to authorize the largest airstrike on Ukraine since his illegal invasion. It's time to stop this liar and murderer, said Republican Senator Tom Tillis. I'm not happy with what is happening there. I believe that we will resolve it, but I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with anything related to this war. Very soon, in the next few days, I will talk to Putin. We will do it. The situation between Russia and Ukraine, we will resolve it. I'm sure of it. I have ended another conflicts before. We are very sorry that this senseless war continues. Melania is very worried about the children. This worries her very much. This was belonged to Donald Trump. And we see, Michael, that Donald Trump, on the one hand, says he is ready to impose additional sanctions. On the other hand, noted that he will soon have a telephone conversation with Vladimir Putin. Has the American leader not realized that diplomacy and negotiations do not work with Vladimir Putin?
Well, let's start from the tweet by Kit Kellogg. That's very interesting. And this is exactly the example which I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, that when Russians, they struck the building of government, when each bureaucrat on the West understands that, yeah? And each bureaucrat in the West feels that, okay, it is about me personally, because me personally, I was in this building, says Mr. Kellogg, yeah, I was. So this it could be the strike against me personally. And the same, I believe, feels everybody from Western leaders who visited Kiev during this war. And today, Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yulia Sviridenko, she organized something like tour to this stricken building for foreign diplomats, 60 foreign diplomats. And each of foreign diplomats during his career or her career visited this building, because this is the building of Ukrainian government. So also they felt that is against them personally. They feel it personally. When Russians strike schools, then Russians strike some children, they don't feel it personally, because they live without children here and visit Ukraine, for example. But this is personally against any any bureaucrats. So this is good that Ukraine now should bring it. It is just help to Ukraine to bring this to the first pages of all the newspaper, all the world newspapers. Okay. And when they continue to speak about President Trump, so I should support President Trump this week. Absolutely support. And I will explain why. Because one of his reasons why he does not put any new sanctions on Russian Federation, he says, and not only he personally, but his staff, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy said today that we want to put the new sanctions on Russian Federation, yes, but we want to do that together with Europe.
With Europe, yes, you're quite right.
We are not ready to subsidize Europe, yeah, putting the sanctions on India, on China, on Russian Federation, and I mean the third parties who participate with trade with Russian Federation. United States de facto subsidize Europe, because Europe continues to buy oil and Europe continues to buy gas. And on the meeting, it was not a physical meeting, it was the call. On last week, there were the call from Paris, when in Paris gathered together all the European leaders, and they called Mr. Trump, and they discussed that. So in press, they reported that, that President Trump was not happy about what they asked. They asked him to put the new sanctions on Russian Federation, and he said, no, just a second. You should stop to buy Russian oil. And President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said, but only Hungary and Slovakia buys the Russian oil. But Hungary and Slovakia, this is also European countries and the members of European Union and members of NATO. And Minister of Energy of United States today continued this Mr. Trump's speech and said, but what about gas? And I will say that Italy buys a lot of Russian gas, and European Union is the main purchaser, the main market for Russian gas, till now.
Yes,
and okay, pipelines of gas, they are exposed, and they don't supply gas by pipeline, but they supply gas by ships to European Union. And today, exactly today, on Monday this week, we have a meeting in Washington between the High Representative of European Union for sanctions, I don't remember exactly the name, Mr. O'Sullivan, sorry, with the Ministry of Finance of United States, and they will prepare the common offer to European countries and United States government about the common sanctions. That is important point. It could work only if both United States and European Union will put the same sanctions on the same day on the same countries. And Financial Times today reported that is the first time during this war that European Union discuss now inside the sanctions against China for trade with Russian oil. That is very important. And another point, Mr. Trump accuses Europe that they buy the refined oil from India, and this is Russian oil refined by India. So in fact, this is like shadow market of Russian oil. And this is true. And Mr. Trump is absolutely right in this case.
Yes, and we see that together European Union and United States can strike Russian Federation, but sometimes we see like we have not only such countries like Hungary really and Slovakia, but France, Belgium and other countries, and I don't really understand why. Maybe they say that in 2027 then always say no to Russian energetic source, but now we have only 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So they not only could strike Russia by these sanctions, but the Minister of Finance of United States Scott Bessent, he said that they could destroy Russian economy, totally destroy Russian economy.
Collapse,
And
yes.
also the Scott Bessent now he's like the leader of American sanctions. He somehow managed that. Obviously, I believe it was agreed with President Trump. We don't know, it was not publicly agreed, yeah, but it looks like it was agreed that he takes the leading role now on sanctions, not only American but also European sanctions. And he brought the new formula about this war generally. It was his speech from just Sunday on some American channel, NBC, I believe. He says that the question now is what will be end first, Ukrainian army or Russian economy? So this is the war between Ukrainian army, Ukrainian military forces, and Russian economy. And he believes that we could just destroy Russian economy totally, that they couldn't finance the war ever. That's the idea now.
And the last but not least question, Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit parade in China, which took place last week. What signals were sent to the world by Chinese leader and his puppets?
Well, it was a very, very tough message. And President Xi, president of China, he said a couple of very strong words against Western world and totally. He said that they will build the new ecosystem on all the globe, and it will be the ecosystem which will be led by China, with Chinese rules, etc., etc. He says that no one of Western countries who have a right to build their own world on the globe. And de facto, this is the start of Cold War. This is the official start. I believe that this meeting will be mentioned in the history books in the future, I mean, if we will have any books in the future after the World War III, as a beginning of the new Cold War at least, and maybe also of the World War III, yeah. Because the coalition is formed, a Chinese coalition, I mean, and this is not only my opinion, obviously, this is the opinion of President Trump again, who brought this opinion. He said, okay, we see that India and Russia, they moved towards Chinese ecosystem, to Chinese empire, and we will be a part of Chinese empire now. And by the way, it's true, because Russians, they also changed, for example, the school program for children. They changed from from the lessons of English language to Chinese language. And they also organized visa-free regime. Chinese, they agreed to make a visa-free regime for Russians. They want to take the best Russians from Russia to China and to use somehow the Russian professionals, let's say, on the Chinese market. Yeah, so this is the start of this huge war. And by the way, today, just a couple of hours ago in Moscow, not in Moscow, sorry, it was in all the BRICS countries, they took the place, the virtual meeting of BRICS countries. Yeah. And it was unpredictable. It was announced just a couple of days ago, this meeting. And today it took place, and from Russian side it was Mr. Putin, and from Chinese side is President Xi and President Lula da Silva from Brazilian side. And Brazil was the initiator of this meeting. And we didn't know what exactly what is the topics of this, yeah, but just 10 minutes ago, it appeared that the topic of this meeting was the American sanctions, American sanctions against India, against Brazil, and potential sanctions against China for supporting Russia. So that means that they are also unified the forces for the, to stay against the Western sanctions. That is very interesting and very important. Yeah.
Yes, really. Michael, a lot of process, and today we say thank you for your opinion, your thoughts, and your analysis. See you next week. Take care. We'll discuss these all topics in future, in dynamic. Goodbye.
Thank you, Iryna. Goodbye. Bye.
Michael Sheitelman, political strategist. My name is Iryna Uzlova. Guys, thank you for watching us, for joining us. Please leave your comments and subscribe to YouTube channel War and Politics 24 and to YouTube channel Michael Sheitelman. Take care. See you.